Hello, guys. Welcome to Rex Arthur TV, the Rex Arthur Show. This is the LGBTQ channel that discusses LGBTQ issues with an LGBT approach, an humanistic approach, and an LGBTQ perspective in an LGBTQ plus planet. And today we're going to do a very important video that is discussing the fundamental rights of every human being in the world. Now, this is a very controversial subject, but very important for people to understand. And we just want to give our views and our analysis over these rights. Of course, they are enshrined in all constitutions in the world, and some have are more elaborate than others, but they are still the same. So why is it very important? And we're going to do this with an LGBTQ perspective, because we have a goal as LGBTQ persons. We have a goal as the Rex Arthur Center. We have a goal for as Rex Arthur Towers to advance the rights of LGBTQ persons all over the world for a reason. LGBTQ persons are human beings, and being human beings, they have fundamental rights. Now, every human being has a fundamental right. Every human being, irrespective of sexual orientation, irrespective of social standing, irrespective of race, we all have fundamental rights, and we need to keep them. So we want to understand them and go through them. Now, some universally recognized rights that are seen as fundamental, that is to be contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the UN International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, include the following: right to self-determination, right to liberty, right to due process. So we are not going to deal with these rights of right to self-determination, to liberty, due process of law. We are going to focus on the freedoms: right to freedom of thought, right to freedom of religion, right to freedom of expression, right to freedom to peaceful assembly, or freedom of peaceful assembly, and then right to freedom of association. So we're going to go through these meanings one by one. Let's see if they are clear. Of course, you can see European Union has no identical doctrine. However, EU law recognizes many of the same human rights and protects them through other means. And then Indian fundamental rights, contrasted with such rights are contained in the US Bill of Rights, present several peculiarities from the word peculiar. The fundamental rights in India are far more elaborate than in the United States. Thus, for example, the U.S. Bill of Rights' first 10 amendments only name some rights. The Supreme Court, through the process of judicial review, decides the limitations of these rights. So, as I said, not every of these rights are the same worldwide. Some are more elaborate than others. So, you find India is more elaborate than America. Then you can see Canada has what you call the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and it outlines 4 freedoms. These are the freedom of conscience and religion, the freedoms of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication, peaceful assembly, and association. So in Canada, freedom of thought includes belief, it includes your opinions and expression, and this is where the freedom of press is involved. Then I've also liked the fact there's conscience and religion. Yes, that's a very powerful freedom, because some people and we'll find out what conscience means. I know what it means, but I just want us to look at that later on. So in India, they have right to equality, right to freedom, which includes freedom of speech and expression, right to assemble peacefully, right to form association or unions, right to move freely throughout the territory of India, right to reside or settle in any part of the territory of India, right to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, right to freedom of religion, right against exploitation, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies, right to vote. And a newly implemented seventh fundamental right is right to education. You see how they love education? Cultural and educational rights, then right to education. Everyone has a right to education. So, a recent addition was made in the list of fundamental rights in 2017, right to privacy. Congratulations, India. So this is a beautiful country when it comes to freedoms and rights. Yes, right to privacy. And this is very important, even when we're going to talk about LGBTQ persons. You have to understand nobody should invade your privacy. And if somebody invades your privacy, you have a right to report them. You have a right to report them. Because privacy is like your clothes, that's why we call the pubic areas private parts. They are only seen by those who need to see them, not by everybody. So, right to privacy. Okay. Now, United States also has the Bill of Rights, and these Bill of Rights, of course, they went through many amendments. And amendments, it was... Okay, what I think happened in America, to summarize this whole article, they didn't... Some of these rights didn't appear at the writing of the Constitution. They came in as amendments. And this is a very understandable thing. When the Constitution of America came in, slavery was still enforced. So was still legal. So when they said we the people, it didn't include black people. It included only white people, and preferably white men. So the American Constitution was set up by white men, majority, and it was about white man interests, all of those things. So amendments came about because the American society was changing, and now the blacks got emancipated. You see, during the post-Civil War Reconstruction, the 14th Amendment was adopted in 1868 to rectify a certain condition on the interpretation of the Bill of Rights. So you see, things were changing because interpretation had to change. And then amendment that granted all privileges and immunities to all U.S. persons in a series of cases called the Slaughterhouse Cases. This decision and others allowed post-emancipation racial discrimination to continue largely unabated. So they still had racism even though there was emancipation. But I want you to understand something very important about this. Interpretation changes, and there is diversity of interpretation. That's why the Supreme Courts have diverse interpretations of laws. Some people are originalists, like Scalia, who died, was an originalist. This is a guy who understands the law as it was written by the original writer. So people who like having the original interpretation of any text want to understand it in the eyes of the person who wrote that thing. That's basically, and I won't go into the legalese. I'm just touching. So that's what happened in America. So they had a lot of amendments because the American society was changing. Racism was being attacked. And then you can see the right to bear arms, Second Amendment, and then indictment by grand jury. That was the Fifth Amendment. So the Constitution of America has gone through many changes. And by the way, very soon, don't be surprised, they may have another amendment. Yes. It's because American society is always changing. And every society is always changing. That's why we amend constitutions rather than destroy them. Like America, some people believe the American Constitution should have been destroyed because it was based or created at a time when slavery was there. But it seems that school of thought was defeated because there was an easier remedy. Rather than destroy the Constitution, just amend it. It's like a house. You've built a house and you feel like you need another extension or another room. So some people think, why don't you just bomb the whole house and then build a new building? Now, 20 years after building that house, cement is expensive, everything is high, wearing pipes, expensive, hiring people to build, expensive. So the best would be to build an extension to the house that has other rooms. So that's what you do rather than destroy the house and then try and make a new constitution. Because a house is a constitution. A constitution in English, proper English, is just structure. So it's a structure. So a constitution, when you want to amend a constitution, it means you want to add something. You want to rectify something. Like I've told you, in a house, maybe you find, oh, you have so many guests and you only have 3 rooms. So you want to add like maybe 2 rooms. So that's an amendment. You are adding something. That's how you do it. So it's better than destroying the house, because destroying the house is so expensive. Can you imagine going through? America would destroy their constitution and then start afresh. The hell they will go through to get a constitution. Wait and see. They will not even survive 10 years with the new constitution that they have created, because they spent a lot of time making the other one that has worked for so many years. So now, how is it that you want to destroy it and then think that you're going to make a new constitution with ease? Because as we progress in time, we are sharper. We have more ideas. We have more everything. So that's what happens. That's why it is harder to make a new constitution in later years than you did in the past. So here you are. There are some specific rights: right to interstate travel, right to parent one's children, right to privacy, right to marriage, right of self-defense. Now that one, that's where you can see America is a gun nation. Good. So I want us to go to, let's see, inalienable rights. I like these ones. And inalienable rights, there are 2 types of rights: natural and legal rights. Natural rights are those that are not dependent on the laws or customs of any particular culture or government, and so are universal and inalienable. They cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. But legal rights are those bestowed onto a person by a given legal system. They can be modified, repealed, and restrained by human laws. So the concept of natural law is related to the concept of natural rights. Natural law was a Greek philosophy concept, and also Roman philosophers used it. It was subsequently alluded in the Bible and developed in the Middle Ages by Albert the Great and Aquinas. So natural law was used to challenge the divine right of kings and became an alternative justification for the establishment of social contract, positive law, and government. The idea of human rights is closely related to that of natural rights. Some acknowledge no difference between the two, regarding them as synonymous, while others choose to keep the terms separate to eliminate association with some features traditionally associated with natural rights. Natural rights in particular are considered beyond the authority of any government or international body to dismiss. The UDHR is an important legal instrument enshrining one conception of natural rights into international soft law. Natural rights were traditionally viewed as exclusively negative rights, whereas human rights also comprise positive rights. Even on a natural rights conception of human rights, the 2 terms may not be synonymous. The proposition that animals have natural rights is one that gained interest of philosophers and legal scholars in the 20th and 21st century. Yes, animals have natural rights because humans are animals. Yes, animals have rights because humans are not animals. What is an animal? It's a being that has life. Anima means breath. So that is a fact. Now, good. So those are the ancient. They're now talking about inalienable rights. Let's see if they've really listed them down. To Locke, according to Locke, these are the three natural rights. Life. Everyone is entitled to live. Liberty. Everyone is entitled to do anything they want to do. They want to, so long as it doesn't conflict with the first right. That's a nice one. Estate. Everyone is entitled to own all they create or gain through gift or trade, so long as it doesn't conflict with the first two rights. So life, liberty, and estate are connected according to Locke. All right, then you have Thomas Paine. He also talked about those rights, and good. So let's go back to fundamental rights. So we all have fundamental rights, and I want us to focus on freedoms. So the first one we want to study is the freedom of movement. Now, freedom of movement, mobility rights, or the right to travel is a human rights concept encompassing the right of individuals to travel from place to place within the territory of a country and to leave the country and return to it. This right includes not only visiting places, but changing the place where the individual resides or works. So, freedom of movement, mobility rights, or the right to travel is a human right that has got to do with traveling from one place to another within a country. And it also involves visiting, and it also involves residence. You can choose to stay in, like, let's pick America. You can choose to stay in one state for 2 years. Then you say, okay, I'm tired of this state. Let me try another state. You can choose to say that in my 50 years of living, I will live in one state a year. So 1 year you're in this state. The second year, another state. The third year. So that is exercising your freedom of movement. Now, such a right is provided in the constitutions of numerous states and in documents reflecting norms of international law. And in UDHR has said that a citizen of a state in which that citizen is present has the liberty to travel, reside in, and or work in any part of the state where one pleases, within the limits of respect for the liberty and rights of others. And that a citizen also has the right to leave any country, including his or her own, and to return to his or her own country at any time. Like what's happening in America. The Mexicans are leaving Mexico. They are exercising this right to leave Mexico and go to another country at any time. I like that. I like that, any time. You know, there are some words in English that are nice. All and any. Some people and organizations advocate an extension of freedom of movement to include freedom of movement or migration between countries as well as within the countries. These are globalists now. The freedom of movement is restricted in a variety of ways by various governments and may vary within territory. So now this is a point you need to understand. Freedom of movement is restricted in many ways, and therefore the rights vary. Such restrictions are based on public health, order, safety justifications, and postulate that the right to these conditions preempts the notion of freedom of movement. Yes, because now the argument is that if you have restrictions to our freedom, then there is no freedom. So really I even wrote a book about this and said there is partial freedom. There is really no absolute freedom, because some countries restrict freedom, like visa. Visa is a restriction. You know, I believe in a visa-less world whereby you can travel to any country as long as you have the money and the passport. You do not need a visa. All they need to do, you get to that country and they stamp your passport, because your passport is now a digital passport, meaning it is based on digitized data. Digitized data. That's for me. I know many people disagree. They are really anti the biometric system, but I'm for it for one point. It can destroy the visa system, which I don't like. Yes, it will make the world visa-less. You can travel to any country in the world. And believe you me, if we had a visa-less world, there would be no refugee crisis. Because all a refugee will need is a passport to go to another country, and he will be helped. Because you have a digitized passport, meaning your data is in the database of the country you're exiting from or the country you belong to. And these countries, sadly, they are nationalistic, so they don't share data. They protect data. But if I were them, if we were living in a globalized world, I believe in a globalized world. I'm telling you, if I was a movie director, I would create a movie where we are all united. Babel. I'll call it Babel, the gate of God, because Babel means the gate of God. And everybody is connected. And you just see people walking you're going to Lithuania, you're going to Bosnia, you're going to Peru, then you're going to Australia, and all of these countries with no qualms, no issues. Because every country has the same identity database. Have you got what I've said? All the 200 countries of the world should have all the identity data of all humans in the world. So what does that mean? When I go to America, I do not need a visa because America has my data. It has my fingerprints, it has my name, it has everything, and my passport number, my ID number. And then I get to America, all I need to do is just pass my fingerprints through there, they check my passport, and I'm in. No need of a visa, and they know that Rex Arthur is in America right now. Then I decide to run to Finland, and I don't need a visa from America to Finland because Finland also has my data. They just go and they key in, and Rex Arthur appears in the Finnish computers, and I'm in Finland. Then I do my business in Finland. Then I say, no, I have to go to Lesotho. So I go to Lesotho, and Lesotho also has my data because all of them every country in the world has the data of the 7 billion people of the world, or roughly people who are passported. Not everybody has a passport. So roughly 3 billion people have passports. So they will have the database of 3 billion people. It's very big, but who knows? We are making better computers that can store data. Okay. This is a common restrictions concerning the freedom of movement. It includes the minimum wage, and then official identity cards that must be carried. Of course, these are weird. They tell you you're free, but you're not free, because even in the country you live in, some countries demand you to have an ID card wherever you go because they want to know who you are. Basically, they don't know who you are. So can you imagine your own government doesn't know you? So you have to produce the identity card. So it's an impediment to the freedom of movement. And then some obligations to register changes of address with the state authorities. Yeah, people, they want to move to another state in the country, and there is a law that says if you move out, you have to tell the state authorities that you've moved out. Otherwise, if you don't, there will be a penalty. So there are some countries that punish people who move out without notifying the state. And other restrictions, protectionists, regional barriers to house building and therefore settlement in particular districts. Then you have trespassing into another individual's property. Yes, you have freedom of movement, but you don't have freedom to trespass. You get to somebody's fence and then you jump
over, and then you walk and you declare this is a free world, and and I'm exercising my freedom of movement and migration. No, there is a fence, it has blocked you. There is a gate, it has blocked you. There's a barrier, it's telling you don't come here. So if you're found there, you've trespassed, even though you'll be exercising the freedom of movement. Of course, there are sometimes, like, let's say there's a fire next door. I mean, you will not stand at the fence and say, because this is a fence, and if I jump to the fence, I have trespassed. Let the fire burn me so that I can keep the law. You see, necessity knows no law. When you need to jump because there's a fire or there's a lion, and the only thing that can save you is to jump over the fence, you will jump. That's it. So don't worry about such circumstances. Knows no law, and we are not legalistic. We should avoid being so hard Calvinist. I call them legal Calvinists, because Calvin was a theologian who took theology so seriously. He used to punish everybody in church. That his language, laws. That's a very realistic who of because life is free. Many things can happen. Many circumstances can happen that can hinder the implementation of laws. So there's freedom of movement between private properties. Of course, we discussed that. And domestic restrictions, quarantines, of course, when there are diseases. And then you have this issue of refugees. And then one notable exception to this is the Schengen area, where citizens of any country in the EU generally enjoy indefinite stay in other EU countries. Yeah, the Schengen area, very important. As long as you're an EU citizen, you can live in any part of EU. Do you know what that has done to the EU? It has killed the borders. EU is actually one country right now. And if UN copied the EU system, the borders of the world would have died. Yes, if the whole world was a Schengen area, a Mexican can go to America because he's a human. He's a human citizen. He's a global citizen. That's why some of us push global citizenship, so that whenever you go to another country, you are a citizen. You are not a foreigner. And that's what I like pushing for, because I am tired of these nationalistic tendencies. You go to another country, you're a foreigner, so you're treated with distrust. People don't know you, they don't want to be with you, and so you wonder, what am I doing? But when you're a global citizen, I go to Ethiopia from Kenya, and Ethiopia says, welcome to your country. This is another part of your world. You're a global citizen, and you're therefore a citizen of Ethiopia. So that is what it happens. And EU, the Schengen area, has helped EU residents. They just walk, no problem. You're in EU ground. All right. And furthermore, restrictions on the right to relocate in certain areas of a country have been imposed in several countries, most prominently China. Of course, China has that problem. They have a very high population, so they don't know. Because of having a very big population, they really have to watch them in a way that they don't know them. Because imagine having 2 billion people in your database. You know, when you have a statistics bureau, you will have to hire very many people. But thank God, or thank goodness, with AI, they will be calculating the number of people and analyzing data with ease. Good. Of course, I told you the visa restrictions. I don't want to talk about that. Then you have exit restrictions and all of that. Now, these are cases, different cases. And in Burma or Myanmar, they have restricted movement of political dissidents, women and migrant workers. In China, They also have restricted, they make internal migration difficult, especially from rural residents to move to urban areas. And so, yes, this is a way to curb rural urban migration. And this is an old system that the Chinese are implementing. Then Hong Kong also has the similar behavior. And India, Israel, yes, Israel has that. Israel, that all persons are free to leave Israel and that every Israeli national has the right of entry into Israel from abroad. In practice, withhold departure from countries orders are liberally issued by Israel courts, including on non-custodial fathers. So even Israel tries to do that. Freedom of movement in Israel, and a source of much controversy in the Palestinian West Bank. Japan, Kuwait, North Korea. Travel to North Korea is tightly controlled. And yes, so there's really no freedom of movement. Syrian citizens are prohibited from exiting the country without special visas issued by government authorities. Can you see what's happening in Syria? There is war, but the law has said you can't leave the country without special visas. It's dangerous. That is why it was almost a genocide. And this is not a good law to have. Look at what the Constitution states. Disaster. Every citizen has a right to liberty of movement within the territory of the state unless prohibited therefrom under the terms of a court order or public health and safety regulations. So there you are. Syria has argued because of this constitutional protection. In Syria, no laws or measures restrict the liberty of movement of citizens. That's weird. However, Syria has been criticized for restrictions to freedom of movement. Amnesty International put an appeal case citing several freedom of movement restrictions, including exit restrictions without explanation, refusal to issue passports to political dissidents, detention, restriction from entering certain structures, denial of travel documents, and denial of nationality. The United Nations Human Rights Committee issues regular reports on human rights in Syria, including freedom of movement. So you see, Syria is a failed state. That's all. It is. Then you have Palestine. Restriction of movements of Israelis and Palestinians in Israel and the West Bank and the Palestinian National Authority is one issue in the Israel-Palestine conflict. So I remember the Oslo Accords. They had given where Palestinians would move and where Israelis would also move. And so they had checkpoints and all of these things. And still today, there is a lot of issue in Israel because of freedom of movement. Now in Africa, the African Charter on Human Rights gives freedom of movement. I like what they've said here. The mass expulsion of non-nationals shall be prohibited. Marx's mass expulsion shall be that which is aimed at national, racial, ethnic, or religious groups. So this is to stop what happened during Idi Amin's time. Idi Amin expelled Asians from Uganda, and it was a violation of the freedom of movement because Asians didn't want to hear. The Charter of Rights has ever one trying to read Idi Amin. All right, we've already talked about Schengen and freedom of movement. So you can see the same laws, but they vary the same, different. But basically, this is one of my best rights, as I've already explained to you how I see it should be panned out. It should be, it should allow people to move freely, and then we would have a global system whereby every country has an identity database for every in the world. You travel in most whereby and the national. Okay. So that was freedom of movement. Now we go to the next film. Freedom of thought. Now, freedom of, also called freedom of conscience, is freedom of an individual to. We thank the governments of this that this freedom. When you go through, have really speech. Freedom of speech is a principle that supports the freedom of individual community to articulate their opinions and ideas without fear of retaliation, censorship. Very important phrase here. Yeah. So the opposite of the free speech is freedom of speech means when with fear and legal sanction articulate opinions and ideas because they are returned. When if you say this, we will kill you. If you say this, we'll arrest you. This, we will. So, in such a there is no freedom of speech. And the term freedom of expression is sometimes used synonymously, but includes any act of receiving, imparting information, regardless of the medium used. So, expression is a freedom of speech, and I think language is varied. Language, you know, you can lift your eye, you can shake your hand. You're part of freedom. Freedom, and you can do this either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, or through any media of his choice. Now, freedom of speech and expression may not be recognized as being absolute. Okay, there's a lesson you need to learn about all these freedoms we are going through. They are not absolute. Even Einstein, the great scientist, said they are no absolute. Because when you measure, he found out why there are no absolutes. So you can measure today, and it says it's 10 meters. Then it is 11 because of change in temperature. It can make the thing stretch or contract. So because of that, Einstein said, of course it was in his discussion of relativity, he said that that's why you cannot say there are absolutes in science. There is no absolute. Yes, it's shocking that he has been countered. But what we mean by absolutes is that when you measure something material, it can sometimes not keep the same measurements. And so because of that, even in law, there is no absolute right. There is no absolute freedom. There is no absolute freedom. Because, that's why even you can't say I'm free to do anything. Does it mean even you're free to kill anybody? You see? That's what freedom is. That's absolute freedom. But it doesn't mean that, because it's against murder. Against killing, that means freedoms are limited. Because you're not free to do whatever you want. You're free to do whatever you want as long as that is it. So it is a limited, it's a defined freedom. I think let's not call it limited. It is a defined freedom. So up to be forgotten, public security and perjury. Justifications for these include by John Stuart Miller. He said that the only purpose of speech so that you can prevent harm to others. So you are allowed to speak because your speech will protect somebody. But basically, freedom of speech
can be limited if it is found that you've lied, slander, you've lied about someone. That is where freedom of speech is curtailed. And pornography. Of course, pornography is not bad. But what you need to know about pornography is that certain people are offended when they see pornographic material, because people have various views about sex. Personally, I don't mind sex. So even if I see naked things and naked acts, it really doesn't affect me negatively. If any case, especially gay porn, it's nice. But there are some people, even if they are gay, get offended seeing gay porn, because there's a way they view sex. For them, sex is something very cherished. So because of that, there are anti-pornography laws in countries, and they control them, especially for children, because children can be exposed. Of course, with the internet now, it is a gone case. Children now know pornography, and it's beyond redemption. The internet came so fast, and the law is a very slow thing, so it's gone. But anyway, the internet has very many safety standards, and if you're a parent, it's your duty to know how to use those standards to take care of your children so that they are not exposed to pornography. So what I was just trying to say is that because few people enjoy pornography. Yes, few people do. What I mean by few people publicly enjoy and publicly state that they enjoy pornography, because many enjoy it. It's just that they can never tell you that's what they do. You see, it's because of the majority view of sex is that sex is a very private thing. So you should not even tell people you like it. They like keeping it like that. So, but for other people, like for me personally, when I first came into contact with porn, I just said, wow, this is a good thing to see the art, how people make love. I was just, and I've been with wonder and understanding the acting and the process. So, but for other people, they'll even scream and say, oh, I don't want to see that. And they actually want it. Good. So that's what happens. So, so because of that, they limit freedom of speech. Because even CNN would have been showing porn. Yes. But they can't. Because if they do, they can be sued for bringing obscenities. So then you have shown, there's some places you cannot show speeches and books of people, because if you do so, you'll be violating copyright laws. So freedom of speech is curtailed. Like you're having an interview and then you talk about Maya Angelou and you want to speak all of her speech. If you do that and it's something, it has been copywritten, you may be sued. Repeating her speech. Yes, so those are that happen. That's why we are limited. Like YouTube, it's just, there are so many things happening on YouTube. So, but as time goes on, a lot of these laws, people will be using these laws to go and deal with people. They'll want to sue them. But sometimes, and that's the problem we're having with these freedoms. Should we just give people freedom to do whatever they want and then... No, I think there's really no problem, because I can say whatever I want about Donald Trump, and citizens talk about Donald Trump. And now, Donald Trump has right, he can sue me if he feels what he said, or what that person said is libelous or slanderous, and it can affect his reputation. If the guy has said something and it really can't affect his reputation, they're going to court for that. Don't. Life is going on. So even Obama, I remember his time, there were so many conspiracy theories about him and his wife, and you just stare. I mean, they didn't
bring down those people because of what they said, because they were not effective in doing anything. But just look at all of these restrictions: incitement, classified information. Some people go out there and reveal the secrets of the government. That's dangerous, because of course, it's dangerous for, as I've told you, in nationalistic sense. We still live in a nationalistic world. We are not yet a fully globalized world, because if we lived in a globalized world, then there is basically no classified information. But when you live in a nationalistic world and you give classified information, there is a nation that will get something and use that information against your nation and can bring your nation down. You see, one of the saddest things in the American election, people forget, I'm so sorry to bring it up now, is that in 2016, during the American election, it was said that there was Russian intrusion of the American election. Now, people need to ask themselves, what happened before 2016 when it came to classified information? There were two things that happened. Chelsea Manning released information and was even arrested for that. And then Edward Snowden released information of what America was doing and even got asylum in Russia. So and Snowden, everybody wanted his head. I even remember Hillary Clinton. They were all shouting to bring Snowden back to be tried. And that's why he went for asylum. And he went to Russia. So there was a very hostile game when this Edward Snowden thing was going on. And what it led to, Snowden revealed secrets about America. Well, not everything. And so did Chelsea Manning. And because it's a nationalistic world, Russia may have got some data about America. I'm just assuming. And therefore used it to intrude. So you see, classified information, that's why Chelsea Manning was arrested and of course set free, thankfully, pardoned by Obama. And then Edward Snowden is still not back in America because of that classified information. So sorry I had to use that example. But anyway, that's the best. What else can I do? The right to be forgotten. And yes, the right to be forgotten. You have the right to go to court and demand all your information. Anything that pertains to you, you can go and let it be destroyed. And then you have public security can sometimes control freedom of speech. If you speak something like ideas or thoughts that may cause destruction of property in the society or the death of people, then you may be controlled because of that. And then perjury, lying. So people are just lying and they declare that something is happening and it's just a lie. So perjury is one of the limitations. Okay, it's a very nice freedom I like discussing about, because that's the basis of our channel. We're here to, and there are three aspects John Milton has discussed of freedom of speech, and that includes the right to express or disseminate information and ideas. But three further distinct aspects: the right to seek information ideas, the right to receive information ideas, and the right to impart information ideas. So this is why we have this channel. We are seeking information and ideas, we have received information ideas, and we are imparting information and ideas. Good. So it is very much related to fair trial and the right to privacy. And this right of freedom of expression is important for the media, which plays a role as a bearer of the general right to the freedom of expression for all. So the general bearer of the right of freedom of expression is held by the media. And this is very true. Just think of it today. If there was no media, how would you know what is happening in Iraq? What is happening with in Australia and other refugee crises? You see, the media is a very important estate in the power structure of the world. That's why governments watch the media. They control them. I mean, look at Trump. All his presidency, he has been attacking the media, especially the media that doesn't support him, because he knows the power of media. Obama won primarily because the media really drummed up for him. So Trump was really not a media man. He's actually a guy who came because of the evangelicals. They're the ones who put him in power. So he was not a media man. So that's why it's understandable the media don't know Trump or don't want to lift him up. So basically, governments know media is powerful, and therefore they try their best to curtail. So whenever when they attack the media, people should understand they're attacking also people. Yes, when a government attacks the media, they are actually attacking people indirectly, because the media is the general bearer of the freedom of expression, then followed by the people. And now with social media, the media is now basically, its role is now shared with the people, because you have mainstream media and you have social media. So even on social media, you have the right to freedom of expression and speech. So, however, the freedom of speech does not necessarily enable freedom of speech. Judith Lichtenberg has outlined conditions in which freedom of the press may constrain freedom of speech, for example, where the media suppresses information or stifles diversity of voice, inherent freedom of speech. Lichtenberg argues simply a form of property right summed up by the principle no money, no voice. So Lichtenberg is saying the press has a very naughty game, that sometimes freedom of speech, freedom of press may constrain freedom of speech because there is something the media is looking for when they ask questions to the public, that they hear that brings money, because no money, no voice. Don't give the microphone idea, Don't give a microphone to something that is not going to bring money. Give the microphone to something that's going to bring money. And that's what stifles freedom of speech. Good. All right, this is of course social, the limitations we've already studied, and very, very, very. Look at the LGBT community like this. For instance, in Russia, the harm and offense principles have been used to justify the Russian. Okay, let's read the first sentence. Interpretations of both harm and offense limitations to freedom of speech are culturally and politically relative. Now, in Russia, the harm and offense principles have been used to justify the Russian LGBT propaganda law, restricting speech and action in relation to LGBT issues. Yes, there is relativity. But in Europe, a number of countries have taken pride in freedom of speech, nevertheless outlaws speech that public from Hungary, Israel, Palestine, Netherlands, Poland. Very good for those countries. There's relativity interpretation. So some people justify harm principle, like Russia, talk about LGBT rights because of the harm principle, that it will harm children, which is not true. Children are born LGBTQ. The best people to take care of LGBT children is LGBTQ persons, and especially LGBTQ organizations. They need to work with parents who have LGBTQ children, and they need to understand them. Now, letting BTQ expression for expression expression of thoughts of the European way. However, even Europe, even though they outlaw speech that has a tone of Holocaust denial. They deny, and this is very common in very anti-Semitic who believes it didn't happen. It's a lie. And it's where when you say that, you've lost your freedom of speech. You can even be sued for that denial. So that's what they're just trying to tell you in a nutshell, but in so many words. There is no absolute freedom of speech. It's just that's what they're saying. All right, I think we can live here forever. Okay, the Internet and Information Society, of course, we'll do that later on. Very, very meaty. Freedom of information. It's also an extension of freedom of speech. And now we have internet censorship. It's happening. Of course, there's what you call state censorship. And then what you have is the social media sites censorships. This is where the social media platform can censor speech on their platforms. Like Facebook is doing that. Twitter has now started doing that. Twitter used to be the most free. They were absolutely free. Then they started checking the sensitivity of comments and then curtailed them. And then now they have now come with even removing accounts that will spew hate speech, So you see, as the years are progressing, we are understanding the effect of certain statements, the effect of certain ideas on society. The reason why nationalism is still not yet being curtailed is because very many people are nationalistic. And as I told you in the other video, we need to do detailed demography. No nationalist against how many are globalist. In my view, the minority of the human population in the world is globalist. And majority of the human population is nationalistic. So what does that mean? It means globalists have a lot of work to do to make their vision come to pass. Yes, we have a lot of work to do to implement the nationalists. All right. Cuba, Iran, Vietnam. All of these countries look at China. China is so funny when it comes to that. So interesting. History of dissent and truth. So basically, China does that because it's not a democracy. Okay, guys, it's very big, so we will close that chapter there. Let's go to another freedom. We should be coming to the end of the video. Good. So let's keep on these freedoms. Let's go to freedom of religion. Freedom of religion supports the freedom of an individual and community to manifest or belief, practice, worship, and observance. It also includes the freedom to change one's religion. So we already looked at this, so we won't go into it so much. So basically, you're free to hold any belief. And while freedom of worship has been defined as a freedom of individual action, nevertheless, freedom from religion is a far more pressing, moralistic, legal, and peaceful solution. So you look at the Muslims. They have the tradition of dhimmis, protected individuals professing an officially tolerated non-Muslim religion. Now I have a problem with that, because what happens to Hindus? By the way, Hindus live in the Arab world. Yes, there are very many Indians. Actually, I was impressed when I was doing a study
on the construction workers in Dubai, and majority of them are Indians, and Indians are idolaters. And that's why I'm laughing at this sentence, because does Islam really tolerate Hinduism? They can tolerate Christianity, but I don't know if they can tolerate Hinduism. But I don't know. I'm going to find out whether there are Hindu temples in Dubai. You know, if they are, then Dubai has really done well, or the United Arab Emirates has done well to tolerate or call Hindus dhimmis, because that's what they should do. Protected individuals, because they don't profess Islam. All right, so that's because based on the freedom of religion. And Cyrus also established a policy of permitting religious freedom throughout the empire, documenting this on the Cyrus cylinder. And some of the historical exceptions have been in regions where one of the revealed religions has been in position of power. Very nice point. There are countries whereby there has been no freedom of religion, and these are countries that have Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, like, okay, Judaism, I wouldn't really say, okay, they have said it's a historical exception. So in the past, where Judaism was practiced, especially in Israel, it was very hard for you to worship idols. But I can't, when they had kings, the law was against idolatry, but the kings were worshipping idols. Everyone was worshipping idols. So Israel has a very weird legal culture, you know. I'm coming.